Russian soldiers surrender to Ukrainian drone to avoid dying in. It is a matter of curiosity how long the Russian army can continue the war. One by one, Russian soldiers are surrendering, signaling that the protracted war is unsustainable for Russian soldiers. As the Russia-Ukraine war approaches its third anniversary, it remains the largest and deadliest war in Europe since World War II. Russian soldiers sent to Ukrainian territory as cannon fodder do not want to die for Putin's war. As you know, in August, Ukraine launched a surprise offensive in the Kursk border region at a time when it was facing a 3-year Russian military operation. 040. Kiev still controls hundreds of square kilometers in Kursk, and this is the first time since World War II that a foreign army has occupied Russian territory due to constant Russian attempts to carry out offensive actions in the Kursk region. 053. The destruction of Russian infantry is regularly carried out by the Ukrainian Army. According to the latest information from the war zone, the Ukrainian military announced the previous day that 21 Russian servicemen were killed during military operations in the Kursk region, part of which has been under Ukrainian control since August 2024. The information was reported by the Ukrainian Airborne Assault Forces. The majority of the Russian prisoners are Marines and paratroopers, including one motorized rifleman. It was also claimed that one soldier was allegedly from Transnistria and another from the village of Mykolivka in the Zaporizhia region. One of the soldiers was born in 2006. The Airborne Assault Forces command stated that the detainees received timely medical care. All orders are usually given by unit commanders, the Russian soldier said, complaining about the punishment they received in the Russian army. The command did not specify whether the Russian armed forces fighters in question were part of the 21-strong group of invaders. However, they were captured in the Kursk region, the command said, noting in a video that they had noticed people who looked like them dressed in the same clothes. Batrikhanov, Leontiev, and Kalmykov are fighters of the Russian Army's 155th Separate Naval Brigade. They replenished the exchange fund a month or two after signing the contracts. The detainees say they have heard of cases of particularly cruel treatment of Ukrainian prisoners of war by the Marine Corps, but have not witnessed them. He confirmed the brigade's reputation for not taking Ukrainian soldiers prisoner, but instead brutally retaliating by cutting off various body parts and decapitating them. Another occupier said he went to war because he had signed a contract due to huge debts. He explained that we are probably talking about over 2 million rubles. The Russian soldier also confirmed that he had been ordered not to take prisoners. He added that there were rumors among the soldiers, among his own men, that they were not supposed to take prisoners, so they cut off the ears and heads of the prisoners. The Russian soldier said that he and his group were surrounded, and then his own men started firing mortars at them. That's when they decided to surrender. The man who admitted to being threatened with torture and captivity said that in return, Ukrainian soldiers gave him their last water, a can of stew, and helped drag the wounded man away. The prisoner of war also confirmed that he had heard that those who attempted to escape were killed. According to him, if the fugitive is caught, they can reset. The North Korean fighters trained with him at the training ground, but in a separate group. The Russians were forbidden to approach them. They could only be seen from 15 meters away. Viktorov could not remember his own unit. He only mentioned something like Group 34. Exactly how he entered the Russian armed forces is unknown. Russian officials claim that they do not engage soldiers from the military training camp in combat. However, a media source in the Russian forces reported that some of these fighters were dispatched to the front line after the exercises. The soldiers said our friend served in the Ukrainian army before. When he was called up, he proved that he had served in the army before. But when he went to the military recruitment office, he was told you served Ukraine, now you will serve Russia. First, he was sent to the Krasnodar region for training, and recently, he called to say that the soldiers had been separated into units and were being prepared to be sent to the Kursk region. They made the right choice by surrendering to the armed forces of Ukraine, the Ukrainian military said in a statement, instead of participating in senseless, poorly supported attacks and calls for Russian troops to surrender and not follow the fantasies of your dictator. At the same time, the Ukrainian armed forces captured 6 more Russian soldiers near Pokrovsk. In the Pokrovsk direction, Ukrainian defenders captured a group of Russian army soldiers. This was reported by the 3rd Spartan Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine, named after Colonel Petro Bulbashin. According to the National Guard fighters, a group of 5 Russian mercenaries tried to storm the building, but under heavy fire they took refuge in a private house. The Russian soldiers were no longer able to continue fighting or retreat, so they voluntarily surrendered. Ukrainian soldiers said that the only Russian citizen who survived the attack group wandered between houses for 6 days and decided to surrender when he realized that help was not coming. Thus, Ukrainian soldiers filled the exchange fund with 6 Russian soldiers at the same time. The Russian offensive in the Kursk Oblast has been hampered by potential resource problems and tactical shifts. Russian troops are reportedly using less military equipment in their offensive against Ukrainian defense positions in the Kursk Oblast. According to operators of the 225th Brigade's attack drone complexes, Russian attempts to push back Ukrainian forces in the Kursk Oblast continue to fail. The Russian military command continues to try to dislodge Ukrainian troops. On one of the fronts, under the cover of fog, the enemy launched an offensive, trying to establish positions in the woods and ruins. The 225th Brigade shared footage of the enemy's destruction. In this period, drone operators play a critical role, providing operational support and quality reconnaissance to the infantry. On January 5th, reports emerged that Ukrainian forces had launched a new offensive against parts of Kursk Oblast. The head of the Ukrainian presidential office, Andriy Yermak, later indirectly confirmed the attack. While the head of the Center for Countering Disinformation of the National Security and Defense Council, Andrei Kovalenko, directly confirmed it, analysts at the Institute for the Study of War noted that Ukrainian forces have resumed offensive actions and made tactical advances in at least 3 areas of Kursk Oblast. The Kursk operation could be said to have halted Russia's occupation of Zaporizhia. Ukraine's offensive against Russia's Kursk Oblast has prevented Russian forces from carrying out large-scale operations. In northeastern and southern Ukraine, Zelensky had previously stated that the purpose of the offensive was to create a buffer zone that would protect Ukraine's major northeastern cities of Kharkiv and Sumy from another Russian attack. Zelensky said that the Kursk operation prevented Russia from reaching its operational objectives in Kharkiv and Sumy oblasts, and that Ukraine needed about 1,000 Russian soldiers to replenish Kiev's prisoner exchange fund. He also claimed to have prevented Russia from launching an offensive to the south. They withdrew their operational forces in the south of our country. Because they were planning to attack Zaporizhia, it was their next operation after Kharkov and Sumy. They were going to Zaporizhia, Zelensky said. So they had to surrender their military units from the direction of Zaporizhia and some areas from the east. Zelensky claimed that Russia had shifted its troops from these regions to Kursk Oblast. While the army reports that Russian forces have deployed assault troops to the region, Moscow has yet to launch a large-scale offensive in Zaporizhia Oblast and has instead concentrated its offensive in eastern Ukraine. Parts of Zaporizhia Oblast have been occupied by Russian forces since the full-scale occupation in 2022. The region remains a regular target of Russian airstrikes. Meanwhile, Russian troops are stubbornly climbing into places from which they will not return. The Turetskaya mine has become a real Bermuda Triangle for Russian troops. Many enemies come there and attack our positions, but very few turn back, and they still climb. Such stubbornness defies logic. In the village of Krimskoy, according to the war correspondent, everything is quite complicated. It is even very difficult to determine the battle line there because it is constantly changing, moving first in one direction, then in the other. Fighting continues in the remnants of Terezk-Zabalka district. Maneuver battles continue in the village of Sherbanovka and the village of Leonidovka. By the way, it is very similar to what is happening now in the Kursk region, Moroshnikov said. He explained that the important thing is to protect the lives and property of the defenders, and that the defense forces can withdraw if necessary. This may be necessary to eliminate more Russian invaders and then retake lost positions, the observer said. The Turetas defense zone continues to withdraw significant amounts of forces that the occupier is unable to redirect to other areas. Let's go first to Chasiv and Konstantinovka. The fight for Turatusk has been going on for 7 months and will continue for some time because the end is not yet in sight. Moreover, Ukrainian troops have reportedly advanced 3 miles behind Russian lines and launched a new offensive. Ukraine's offensive against Russia to advance 3 miles has been disastrous for Putin. According to a report by the Institute for the Study of War, a new wave of battalion offensives against Russia's Kursk region has allowed Kiev fighters to gain 3 miles behind enemy lines. Ukrainian troops launched a counteroffensive on the Kursk border at the beginning of the year, sending armored vehicles and hundreds of soldiers into the area southeast of Russia's Sudzha region. Geolocated images released on Thursday show Ukrainian troops advancing in the snowy area southeast of Sudzha, near the villages of Makhnovka and Cherkasskaya Konopelka. Russian bloggers estimate that the attack was carried out with 30 to 50 armored vehicles, while they are thought to have captured the settlements of Kalmykov and Fanasyevka, the closest settlements to Sudzha. The Russian Defense Forces said that Ukraine attacked the region with 2 battalions of armored vehicles and was blocked by Moscow forces. Social media channels, on the other hand, reported that Ukrainian forces suffered heavy losses in the attack on Thursday, but still managed to make a significant impact. In recent days, there has been disagreement between the opposing forces over which settlements have been captured. A Ukrainian officer is skeptical of Russia's claim that it captured the mining town of Toretsk in the Donetsk region on Friday. 28th Brigade Press Officer Yevhen Alkimov said in a statement that his unit had not moved from its positions and that if Toretsk fell, it would most likely happen. Nearly 3 years after the start of the conflict in Eastern Europe, the region seems to be at a crossroads. Donald Trump's pledge to end the conflict within 6 months of taking office is still having an impact on the region. Despite the 3-mile advance into Russian territory, Ukrainian forces are reportedly short of personnel and continue to advance steadily along the front line. Noting that this week marks 6 months since Ukraine's cross-border offensive, President Volodymyr Zelensky said, "We brought the war to Russia. They should feel what war really means. And they feel it." Zelensky also said that North Korean soldiers have returned to fight in Kursk. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said North Korean soldiers have been brought back to fight on the front line in Russia's Kursk region. In his evening address to the nation, Zelensky said a large number of invaders have been neutralized in recent battles. "We are talking about hundreds of Russian and North Korean soldiers." North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sent an estimated 12,000 North Korean troops to Russia in the fall, intelligence reports suggest, and they were quickly sent to Kursk. Estimates from Ukraine suggest that about half of that number were killed or wounded. In late January, the Ukrainian Special Forces commander reportedly said that Kim's troops fighting on behalf of Moscow had temporarily withdrawn from the Kursk front after suffering heavy casualties. Days later, North Korean troops reportedly withdrew from Kursk, while a spokesman for the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces said that the Ukrainian Army had not fought against North Korean troops for weeks. However, Lieutenant General Kirill Budanov disputed these reports, saying that the number of North Korean troops had only decreased. According to Budanov, about 8,000 of Kim's soldiers have continued to fight alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin's men. While Zelensky did not specify the exact number of North Korean troops in Kursk, he said in an interview with Reuters on Friday that thousands of Kim's soldiers had returned to active fighting in the region after a hiatus. The Ukrainian leader also confirmed to Reuters that his armed forces launched a new offensive in Kursk this week, advancing 1.5 miles in the area. Speaking in the evening, Zelensky said military operations in Kursk were of vital importance, adding that the fact that clashes are taking place, especially on Russian territory, prevents the escalation of tensions towards our cities, towards our territory. There are 60,000 Russian troops in Kursk Oblast, 60,000 in total, which does not reinforce the already significant Russian forces in Pokrovsk and other sectors in Donetsk Oblast, he said. On the other hand, despite China's claims of neutrality, Chinese state-linked companies have reportedly supplied Russia with 3 strategic minerals critical for military technologies. As you know, Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, China has become an economic lifeline for Moscow, strengthening trade and military ties with its northern neighbor. Beijing portrays itself as a neutral mediator, claiming that it does not supply arms to any side. But NATO has characterized China as a decisive facilitator of Russia's war effort, and the US and EU have sanctioned hundreds of Chinese citizens and entities for exports deemed to aid Russia's military-industrial base on January 30, 2025. A US-funded news outlet reported that Chinese companies supplied Russia with germanium, gallium, and antimony. These elements are used in the production of parts for weapon systems, such as the fighter jets Russia has deployed against Ukrainian cities. At least a third of these suppliers are said to be partly owned by the Chinese government. Among them is Yunnan Lin Kong Shin Yuan Germanium Industry, in which Chinese Communist member Bao Wendong holds the largest stake. According to the report, 2 minority shareholders of the company receive partial government funding. Vital Technology Group, which supplies germanium, gallium, and antimony to Russia, is made up of Chinese firms in which state-owned enterprises hold about 25% stakes. Across the border, a Russian subsidiary of Japanese electronics manufacturer Ferrotech imports Chinese antimony, a key material for silicon wafer production. Analyzing tax and customs records, the publication found that the subsidiary sells these wafers to Russian microelectronics companies known to supply the military. This is noteworthy because Japan, like the US, has imposed export bans aimed at restricting Russia's war efforts. These include sanctions on military-linked entities and asset freezes. But despite all this, the Russian military is suffering ever-increasing casualties, jeopardizing its operations and undermining its ability to achieve its war ambitions. So, what do you think about this issue? We would be glad if you specify in the comments. Thank you for watching us. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like to support us.